who do you believe is responsible for all the things that happens in your life? Truth be told, when I was growing up, I became a victim of my own life. You know, everything that happened to me, down to, me being in a wheelchair, down to how people treated me, down to how people looked at me, down to what happened circumstantially in my life, was everyone else's fault. Everyone else got the blame. Anything that would happen to me, I could stub my toe in the morning and it was the mailman's fault because he rang the doorbell and made me jump. So really, I became this victim to my own life in such a way that, to be honest with you, it continued to translate year by year into my life in such a way that it now affected me in business. But before that, we're looking at, I wanted to be good at something. And the problem was, I didn't really feel like I was good at anything. Everything that I started in my life, I had quit. As a kid growing up, my parents were really inclusive with me and my situation. They really wanted to get me around a whole bunch of people in wheelchairs and just have a good time, do all this stuff together. And so they put me in a lot of sports. So I was in a lot of adaptive sports, that's what they call it. So I was in wheelchair basketball. I didn't like that, so I quit that. I was in tennis. I didn't like that, so I quit that. And, I was doing all these things, and some of you might say, well, you were just trying it out and you found that you didn't like it. But I think the truth was, I wasn't comfortable in my skin and I wasn't really okay with my situation. So I didn't want to be around a whole bunch of people in wheelchairs because that just reminded me that I was in a wheelchair and that I couldn't just play regular basketball. I had to be in a group with a whole bunch of people in wheelchairs to play basketball or tennis or whatever the case, right? Now, when I was really young too, in elementary school, middle school, you name it, I used to get in a lot of trouble. Now, I was kind of a problem child in elementary school and middle school, but my parents didn't really care, and here's why. I used to get picked on a lot as a kid. And my bigger brother used to actually stick up for me quite a lot. Up until I was in third grade, we were in the same school together. And so anytime somebody would pick on me, I wouldn't really say much. I would just go to him, tell him the situation, tell him what was going on, and then it was pretty much like, if they were lucky, it was him going to them and saying, hey, leave him alone. But if they made him mad enough, depending on what they said to me, or, whatever the case, because kids are mean when they're young. A lot of parents don't address that, but kids are very, very mean. I used to get threatened a lot as a kid and all that stuff. And so sometimes it got to the point where my brother and some of his friends were fed up and they would beat up some kids, and we'd end up in the principal's office, and my mom would kind of look at the situation and be like, well, you realize that my younger son is in a wheelchair. He's getting picked on. And my older son is really just protective. So when stuff happens, how do I expect him not to stick up for him? I'm totally cool with it. So we used to get a lot of heat growing up. But to be honest with you, being picked on as a kid, aside from having my brother there to have my back, really got to me. Really got to my head, and it translated into my life completely as I was moving on grade to grade. It really just made me feel worthless. And I started to notice every little thing about me. I was really self-conscious about my teeth growing up because I had taken a lot of medication as a kid. And so because of that, I had really yellow teeth because I had no enamel. So I didn't used to smile a lot as a kid. And I'm barely getting into the phase now of my life where I'm smiling a lot more. But truth is, I realized I look so miserable in most pictures, even when I'm happy. So I was like, I might as well start smiling, right? But there was a lot of these things that I was really self-conscious about as a kid because of all these things that were happening that was really never dealt with, right? And so fast forward a little bit, as things were progressing in my life, everything that I was doing, I was quitting. Down to one of the final things that I quit as I was going into adulthood, which was high school. I dropped out. I was completely done with high school. I wanted nothing to do with it. So I dropped out. I got my GED like 2 weeks after I dropped out of high school. And, I was really just struggling to find my way and figure out, what is Devon good at? Am I good at anything? Am I ever going to be good at anything? Is anybody ever going to notice me? Is anybody ever going to pay attention to me? Am I ever going to amount to anything? And along this journey, I had tried really hard in school. But you see, I started following these same patterns because I would go to school, things would get a little difficult. I wasn't very decisive about my major or anything like that. And so I would take a few classes, then I'd switch my major, then I'd take another couple classes, then I'd switch my major. Before I knew it, I just had all these miscellaneous credits. And one day I'm just thinking to myself, what's the point? And so I stopped showing up for classes. I had, before I left community college, I had like a 0.9 GPA. And the truth is, it's not because I didn't apply, I didn't apply myself. The truth is, I didn't even show up, let alone apply myself to the information that was being given. I didn't even know any of the information that was being given. And so I was sure that was it. I was never going to go back to school. I was never going to do that again. I was just going to be this sad Devon for the rest of my life. And I remember just almost by chance, my uncle and my grandpa were in town. They lived about an hour and a half of where I lived at the time, and still live about an hour and a half away from me now. And we went out to lunch. I don't even know for what reason. And I remember sitting down with them, and my grandpa was on the board of directors for a hospital in the area. And so I was looking at a whole bunch of jobs that I could potentially get without a degree. And I said, can you put in a good word for me? And my uncle across the table, I'm already really nervous because to them, they're kind of this really big authority in my life. My grandpa was kind of a big deal, not only in the town where he lived, but, in the town where we lived as well. A lot of people knew his name. And my uncle was starting to become the same way. So to them, when they're talking to me, when they're saying things to me, I'm kind of in that zone where I'm like, I don't know what they're going to say. I don't know how I'm going to take it. Like, I got to be good. I got to focus, whatever. And my uncle looks at me, and he just gets really quiet for a second, and he says, Devon, I don't think you should get a job anywhere. I think what you need to do is you need to go back to school. And about a couple months before he was saying this, he was still a recruiter for a really big name school here in New Mexico Tech. And so I had a really crappy GPA at C&M, but we were talking to some recruiters there. And so they put me on this weird probation. I decided at that point, this is what I wanted to do. I'm super smart. My mom always told me, hey, you may not have, your legs, or you may not be able to walk, but at least you still have your brain, everything in between, your smarts, whatever. So I really held on to that, and I was convinced that I wanted to be a mechanical engineer. So I took this very first semester as a chance to prove myself, in which case they would then give me admissions to New Mexico Tech. And I ended up getting a 4.0, and that was probably the first 4.0 I've ever got in my life. People always used to make this joke with me. They were like, you went to C&M, a community college, and you had a really hard time. You got a 0.9 GPA, and then you come to one of the most prestigious, hardest schools in the nation. It was number 8 for engineering in the world, and I all of a sudden had a 4.0. Didn't make any sense. But I started to think that this was what I was supposed to do. But it's weird because even when I was sure that this is what I was supposed to do, I started on this path that I always do. I talk about this mountain that I'm climbing, right? And I'm climbing this mountain, and I hit this peak because I remember that my financial aid was kind of running out, and I was having a hard time. I was basically living off of loans. I was living in the dorm, and I kind of turned to some family because I really was running out of money and didn't know what to do. And I remember I finally decided that I was going to stick with tech and do my thing. And it was a couple months into the semester, and I get this call from financial aid, and they tell me, Devon, if you don't pay for your classes by Friday, you can't be in school any longer. And so I'm sweating, I'm freaking out, I'm thinking, I don't even want to ask them how much I owe them or how much they expect of me, but I figure, hey, maybe it's just a couple $100. Maybe it's something really simple that I can get taken care of for now until my financial aid kicks in. And they look at me and they say, yeah, you have to pay us $3,000 by Friday or you can't be in school. So at that point, I felt really defeated because to me, that was the point of saying, hey, I can't really do this anymore. I don't have $3,000. I'm not going to go to my parents and ask for $3,000. I'm not going to go to my grandpa, any of my family, and ask for $3,000. So I remember just telling them, hey, if this is the only means of me staying in this school, I guess I can't be here anymore. You could just drop my classes. And I packed up all my bags and I left. And I was sure that was it. You know, here I was thinking that I was going to be a mechanical engineer. I was going to be the star of my family. And that came crashing down too. You know, and about that same time, I went out and I got another job. And it was this job that I was talking about before where I was so excited about it. I was convinced that I was going to be a CEO. You'll notice these same patterns in my mind regardless of the situation that I'm doing. And so I'm really excited. I'm real pumped up. I'm super excited to go to work every day. And then I get in this same grind every day. And I see people around me getting promoted. And I see me in the same spot, working my butt off and not getting the recognition that I felt like I deserved. And so because of that, I started getting sad. I started getting depressed. I started getting to the point where I wasn't showing up to work and not leaving my room. And this was really the point in my life that was kind of the point of no return, because I was analyzing my life and thinking to myself, what really do I have left to do? I keep doing the same things. I keep going through the same cycle. Nothing's ever changing. I'm doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. That's honestly the definition of insanity. And that was the point where I realized there's not much left for me to do. And about that same time, I met my wife. She was obviously like my friend at the time, soon to be girlfriend, now my wife. And she really just told me, she's like, you know, you have to do something that makes you happy. And it was kind of her goal at that point to get me out of my room, to get some fresh air even, to just be myself and find myself. And it was also about that same time that I came across the ad that was the start of the love for a social media marketing agency in my mind. And I was definitely sure at that point, this was what I was always supposed to do. I'm going to make tons of money. Forget that degree. I'm going to get $10,000 by next week. I'm going to have 100 clients. It's going to be so awesome. I'm going to do my thing. Everybody's going to be proud of me. Everybody's going to be talking about me at the dinner table. This is my time to shine. And I didn't really analyze or think about the fact that I was still going to have to work my butt off. I was still going to have to do my thing. It was going to almost be like I was at the university again, because I'm learning a new skill for one, and I'm trying to acquire these customers at the same time, yet I'm only putting about 3 hours of work in a day and expecting that I'm going to be this super successful social media marketing agency guy. And when that didn't happen, I was wondering, what in the world is wrong with me? And, you know, luckily I had some family that were kind of letting me get my feet wet at that point. I went out and I designed a couple websites for them. And almost simultaneously, I was really just searching for something. I was reading a lot, and I was looking on Tai Lopez's book list. And two of the books that came up was .com Secrets and Expert Secrets by Russell Brunson. And so I read these books, and it just blew my mind. I hadn't known about sales funnels yet. Had I known about that, I would have bought these books through the sales funnels. But I just bought them through Amazon, thinking that was the only way I could get them. And so I bought them. I remember they came in, and they kind of sat on the shelf for a minute. But once I dusted them off and I started reading them, it absolutely changed the way I thought about my life. It absolutely changed the way I thought about marketing. It absolutely changed the way I thought about everything I was doing up to this point. And I was convinced that I was doing everything wrong, because here I was trying to design websites for people, trying to run people's social media, trying to acquire customers by walking into a business. And all along, what I was missing out on was a sales funnel. And so this was the transformation for me that I didn't expect. And at that point, it just kept growing more and more and more. And over the past year, I've really sought out to understand ClickFunnels like I never have before, in such a way that I feel like I've honestly mastered it. I've built funnels for people. I've built funnels for myself. I've launched funnels. I've had funnels fail. I've ran ads to funnels. I've just built funnels for fun. I've built a funnel for my wife for her birthday to send her love notes. I've done everything in between on ClickFunnels. It's this point that I realized when we let life just work itself out, that's when things fall into place. All of my life, I was forcing things. I was listening to the noise. I was listening to what everybody was saying over here, to what my uncle and my grandpa was saying back here, to what, my parents were saying about school. And all of these are fine. These are fine suggestions because they're looking out for me. But at the same time, it wasn't until I searched my heart and figured out what was there, figured out what I loved, and figured out what I wanted to do, that I found this path that I'm on now. Hey, so here in just a sec, a video is going to pop up, maybe over here. I really never know what side it pops up. Sometimes it's on my left side of me, sometimes it's on the right side of me. I don't really know. But in this video, I actually go into depth about a concept that I feel like a lot of people want to know about. Some people have made popular the 1 hour work week, 4 hour work week, whatever the case. And this video goes into depth on how much time you really need to put into your business a week for it to actually be successful and potentially to even automate it. So this video is going to pop up somewhere on either side of me. You're going to want to click on that video now and go check it out.